One of my favorite builds in ESO for grinding experience, playing solo, or just flat out blowing up groups of enemies, got a new update, and it's really good. Hey everybody, this is my updated 1-bar Stamina Warden bow build for ESO. One of the easiest builds you can play in the game right now that does a ton of damage very quickly. This is going to be perfect for grinding CP, playing solo or normal groups, and it's a ridiculous amount of fun just watching enemies blow up right in front of you. I think you're going to enjoy this one, so enough talking, let's get right into the video. Alright everybody, here we are back on the Stamina Warden with an updated 1-bar bow build for the Stamina Warden, also known as the BOWZERKER. Been a long time since I've updated this one, and it's very, very powerful. We're talking tons of burst damage, tons of speed, so this is going to be great for things like grinding experience, overland content, even some of the easier dungeons. You can just blow through with this particular setup because it is very, very strong. Now, I'll go ahead and jump right into the buff stats here, which is very simple on the 1-bar build. You can use a potion, some of our Warden buffs, and that's basically it. So 14,000 max magicka, 25,000 max health, almost 30,000 max stamina, and look at those recoveries, especially the health recovery. I've set up this 1-bar build to not need a heal. The healing comes from health recovery, which is going to be great for most content. Stamina recovery is also looking very good. Weapon damage actually does go up about 6,000, more than 6,000 with all of our sets procced, and then 52% crit chance is looking very good. In terms of the attributes, because this is a Stamina Warden, you'll want 64 points into Stamina, even though we do have a couple Magicka abilities, which we'll look at in a minute. As far as the Mundus Stone, using the Lover Mundus currently, you can switch this back and forth between the Thief, based on the type of content of your group or solo. But for most solo content, the Lover is going to be preferable on this setup. For food, basically anything with stamina and stamina recovery. Now, if you do want to max out that health recovery, something like Artaeum Takeaway Broth, Bewitched Sugar Skulls, these are things that also have health recovery as part of the bonus, so those will be really nice too. But if you don't want to spend the extra gold, just something basic, Dubious Cameron Throne, totally fine on this particular setup. You can see the other buffs we're getting here. You probably know what this means. Talk about that in the gear section in just a minute. But in terms of what race is best, I like Khajiit on this personally, and that's because this build is set up for crit damage, as much crit as possible. So we've got the Feline Ambush passive, 12% bonus crit damage and crit healing. As a Warden, the Animal Species skill line, that passive is going to give you tons of crit damage as well. So this is just a crit monster. Khajiit also has some nice max stat bonuses. They have bonus recovery, so it's very good all-around choice. Of course, you could do another damage race, something like Dark Elf, High Elf, even Orc for the extra speed would be actually really powerful on this setup. So go ahead and do what you want there as far as the race. And then, like I said, any potion is going to be fine. If you use something with health that's going to help max out that health recovery stat, or just basic stamina potions, that's totally fine as well. Since we have all of our major bonuses coming from equipment, you can go ahead and play around with different potions options. That's totally fine. So that being said, that's the basics. Let's jump into the gear sets next. A little bit has changed here, starting with our bow, and that's going to be the Order's Wrath. What I wanted here was a simpler and easy to get crafted set, and Order's Wrath is about as easy as it comes. I believe it's 3 pieces you need to research for this. It is incredibly powerful though, with all of the crit chance that it offers. It even has a bonus, a 5-piece bonus with extra crit chance, which is kind of unusual. And then, of course, the bonus critical damage and critical healing. It's going to fit in perfect with the Warden. It's going to synergize with the Khajiit. So this works really well when you're trying to kill enemies quickly. Of course, this is a bow build, so we're using 2 pieces of the set there with the front bar bow. Precise is the trait, and I do have a weapon and spell damage glyph here on the 1-bar setup. That does make sense if you're, grinding experience with a 1-bar build, because you're not going to have a back bar or an infused, back bar weapon of any kind. You won't have 100% uptime on this glyph, but you can assume, you'll have a few seconds in between pulls and in between fights. where you will have a pretty decent uptime on this overall, even if it's on the front bar. Third piece is going to be on the waist. We have a light Order's Wrath belt here, max stamina. Divines is the trait. You could also do training if you'd like to max out your experience gain. That's just as viable. And then 2 pieces on the jewelry. So we've got the Order's Wrath necklace and Order's Wrath ring, both with weapon damage, both infused, because again, I want to pump out as much upfront damage as possible with our burst combo, which you'll see in just a minute. So that is new. Previously, I've used New Moon Acolyte. You could use pretty much any, crafted set that's damage focused. And I will have different, alternate gear sets listed in the written guide. So if you don't have access to this, make sure to check that out. Link will be in the description and the pinned comment down below. Second set is going to be very good for the Warden bow build, and that is Dagon's Dominion. This is a dungeon set, medium armor dungeon set that I love for this particular build because look at the 5-piece bonus. It adds about 500 weapon and spell damage to your area effect abilities. So basically anything that's not single target, it's going to get about a 500 weapon and spell damage boost when running this set. Now it is a dungeon set, you will need to farm this. I believe it comes from the Cauldron, which is a DLC dungeon. But if you're looking for a powerful Stamina Warden set, I mean this is a very good one. You'll see in a minute that it basically buffs all of our damage skills. Great for grinding, like I said, because most of the damage that we're doing is area of effect. So 5 pieces on the body is how I set this up. I just figured that would be easiest for you to farm those. You can just, run through the first couple bosses, reset the dungeon, and get 5 body pieces. Again, Divines will result in more damage, or if you want to maximize experience gain, you can have a couple of training traits. That would be fine as well. So we are using the boots, the legs, the hands, the shoulders, and the chest. So that's 5 pieces on the body. 1 piece left over, we're going to use a Slime Craw monster set just for the little bit of extra critical chance. That is going to help a bit on this particular setup. I went with light armor. By the way, we have tons of crit damage. We don't need full medium. Actually, the extra crit chance and penetration from running light pieces is helpful on this build. So 1 piece of light for the helmet. And as you might expect, that leaves 1 slot left over for a mythic item, something like the Oaken Soul Ring, which really adds a lot of power and flexibility to this setup. In the past, before Oaken Soul Ring, I did have to, run specific buffs and skills on the 1-bar build just to, make sure I'm doing basic damage. Things like Major Brutality, Major Savagery. You're totally free now if you're using Oaken Soul Ring, where you don't have to run those skills. You don't even need an armor buff. This gives you Major Resolve. It gives you Minor Protection, Minor Force, so you don't need to run Barbed Trap or Channeled Acceleration. Even some extra buffs that you wouldn't get normally. Things like Minor Courage, Minor Slayer, Minor Heroism, Minor Aegis, and Power, of course. Yeah, this really takes the 1-bar Warden to an entirely new level. I definitely recommend it even for, other classes who want to do a simple bow build, a 1-bar bow build setup. This really is great. And if you don't have this yet, I do have a guide for it on my website. I do have a guide on YouTube. I'll have links for those down in the description. Make sure you check those out. Again, we are running the Order's Wrath set for our bow. 1 piece on the body, 2 jewelry pieces. Dagon's Dominion on the body, 5 pieces there. 1 piece monster set, preferably Slime Craw. And then the Oaken Soul Ring is the last piece. Again, I will have alternate sets on the website. Make sure to check those out. Link will be down in the description. Now, let's talk about the 1-bar skills. Couldn't get much simpler than this. Starting with our first sort of damage ability and buff. This is Screaming Cliff Racer from the Animal Companion skill line. And now you'll notice, first of all, this is a Magicka skill, so it's kind of interesting that we're running this on a Stamina Warden, but this thing buffs your damage like crazy. You look at the bottom of this tooltip, after you deal damage, this increases your weapon and spell damage by 100 for 10 seconds, which quadruples, which, 4x's after damaging off-balance enemies. So basically what that means, 400 bonus weapon and spell damage on this build just by using 1 ability. This already sets the enemy off balance and it procs the buff at the same time. So for killing packs of enemies quickly, moving from pack to pack, or pulling in groups quickly in a dungeon, this makes perfect sense because you can proc it on 1 enemy in the group, you get 400 weapon and spell damage that lets you kill off all the other enemies that much quicker. You can use it as a single target DPS, but it's mainly just for that buff. That's why I like it. Now our main damaging ability, one of them at least, is going to be Subterranean Assault. This is a big burst of AoE damage. It's a line of damage in front of you. It has a 3-second delay though, so basically you want to charge this or, cast it as the enemies are coming towards you. 3 seconds later, it's going to erupt and cause damage. And it actually works out really well with Cliff Racer, which also has a bit of a delay. It's not listed in the tooltip, but it's about a second or so delay on this cast. So basically what you can do, Subterranean Assault takes 3 seconds, then cast your Screaming Cliff Racer about a second later. Those will both hit at the same time. Now our third part of the damage combo, I'm going to skip over to our bow skill, and that is Bombard. This is also AoE damage in front of you. It's a cone. It also immobilizes, basically roots enemies in place for 4 seconds. And this is the third part of the damage combo. This is your ultimate trash clearing skill. Obviously, rooting enemies in place is very helpful. It's great when you're solo, but as long as you're standing, sort of far back from enemies, the range of this is pretty wide. It has a wide spread, and you'll just be able to root enemies in place and just blast them down with this. It's basically an AoE spammable in the case of this build. And that is it in terms of damage. It's just those 3 skills, really 2 damage skills and 1 buff. And then the rest is completely up to you. These last 2 slots are more flexible. I do have a mobility skill here. So back in Animal Companions, you can use the Deceptive Predator skill. This gives you major expedition for 6 seconds. It also gives you immunity to snares and immobilizations, and you gain minor evasion, so a bit more damage reduction from AoE attacks, which is kind of handy. I'm not using the other morph. The other morph gives you minor berserk. You get the same buff from the Oaken Soul rig. But again, that's flexible. This build is already fast, especially with champion points. So you could definitely put other skills here, maybe other skills from the bow skill line. For example, you might want a single target, stamina bow skill. You can put focused aim here. You might want something like poison ejection. You can put that here as well. That's totally fine. And that might be more appropriate for something like a dungeon where you don't need a lot of speed to run around. And then finally, our last normal ability here, Growing Swarm. I do recommend this for the dot. It is kind of effective on more, boss level and elite enemies. Applying that dot, it also gives you a nice debuff here, minor vulnerability, increasing their damage taken. And it does AoE, or basically, bleed damage to enemies nearby. So it is nice to have this on the bar. But again, that's flexible. You don't need it for the main damage combo. And you could put something like another bow ability here if you preferred. Now, in terms of the ultimate, yes, you have options here as well. I really do like the Warden Wild Guardian ultimate because it's just kind of a passive damage skill. Basically, your bear pet is your trash cleanup guy. He's going to go around and swipe down any enemies that your burst combo doesn't kill outright. So he does help out quite a bit with this particular setup. And it's just fun. It's just fun to play, a Warden bow build with the bear pet, sort of like a ranger setup. That's sort of what I envision for this particular build. Now, there is a trick that has to do with champion points, which I'll get to later on in the video, but my bear pet is why I have, in combination with a potion, over 3,000 health recovery, which is going to substitute for our healing in a lot of basic, overland content and things like that. So we'll get to that in a minute, but that is the basic skills. So let's go ahead and talk about the burst combo really quick. I did mention it. The combo here, again, is basically Subterranean Assault, followed by Screaming Cliff Racer, and then just spamming Bombard. So if I were to do that, it would look something like this. Here's Sub Assault, here's Cliff Racer, and then Bombard. And you can see things just blow up pretty much immediately. Come over here, again, Sub Assault into Cliff Racer, into Bombard. And try to keep a little bit of range. Remember, bow abilities do have bonus damage. The further you are from an enemy, Sub Assault, Screaming Cliff Racer, Bombard. You want to stay in about this range. Also remember your Sub Assault fires twice. So if you get, a couple packs together, you don't have to recast it. You can just use the second cast, which is automatic. It looks kind of like this. There you go, just tons of damage and very fun burst combo. All right, and as usual, you can find those skills listed on the written guide on the website. You can check that out for more information. Over there, I will also have a list of the passive skills that are required for the build and all the champion points broken out by 300, 600, 900, and 1200 CP, so you can see the different loadouts I would recommend based on your champion point rank. But just to show you those slotted stars, what I would recommend on this build, the green tree, remember this is all about mobility on this setup, farming enemies quickly. So you definitely will want Steed's Blessing to move around between fights. From there, it's really up to you. I like using Treasure Hunter as well as Rationer and Liquid Efficiency. The blue tree here is very basic as well. I would start with Biting Aura, that's going to buff your AoE damage, which is very important on this build, as well as Mastered Arms for direct damage. Third, Slottable is going to be Fighting Finesse for even more bonus crit damage. And then finally, Wrathful Strikes for the extra weapon and spell damage. This doesn't show up on your stat sheet, but it is applied to your damaging abilities, so that is pretty good on this build as well. Red Tree, a little bit different on this setup the way I've done it. Now, you can play around with this, but what I found works best is going to be Boundless Vitality first for the health, then 2 Sustain Stars. So we have Bloody Renewal and Siphoning Spells. This is going to help a lot with sustaining your Screaming Cliff Racer, as well as that movement speed buff if you're using that a lot in between fights. As long as you're killing like 3 to 4 enemies at least, you'll get all of your magicka back, as well as, you know, your stamina from Bloody Renewal. So these 2 are really helpful. And then that final champion point that I mentioned, the one that's giving me over 3,000 health recovery for free basically, that's going to be Strategic Reserve. So you can see this gains 30 health recovery for every 10 ultimate you have. Now basically with the Bear ultimate, you're getting damage for free without even casting it. So you can keep all 500 ultimate points in reserve. And if you use this, it's basically 1,500 raw health recovery, which also gets buffed by our potions. So it ends up being a lot of bonus healing that you don't even need to think about. I do like it, you know, just for basic things like grinding experience. So check that out if you have a healer or a companion or something else and you just don't need the health recovery, then I would just move that over to Rejuvenation and pick up your basic recovery buff that way. Last but not least, we can check out the outfit style if you're interested in how I got this going. This is a couple different gear sets combined. There's a few different styles combined. For the head, it's going to be Redoran in the light armor weight. And then for the body pieces, those are light armor as well. And that is the Ice Reach Coven style. All right, everybody, that is going to wrap it up for this updated Stamina Warden 1-bar bow build for the Elder Scrolls Online. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. If you did, do me a favor, crush that like button. And if you have any questions, make sure to check out the written guide that's going to be linked down below in the description and the pinned comment. In the written guide, you can find alternate gear sets, a full list of skills and passives, and where to get them, as well as that champion point breakdown by 300, 600, 900, and 1200 champion points. So there's something here for everybody. And like I said, we also have a guide for the Oaken Soul Ring. So if you don't have that yet, go ahead and head over to that guide. Check it out. It is well worth the time invested to make powerful and easy builds just like this one. I highly recommend it. But as always, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you're doing well. Stay safe out there, and I will see you around in the next video.